The period from 1930 to 1960 saw a rapid development of military aviation, from the slow biplanes to supersonic interceptors. However, despite many great innovations, there were also less successful designs. Very often did this happen because the designs were too far ahead of their time, and the technology just wasn't ready. And some of those aircraft even tried to kill their pilots, and sadly succeeded. Hi, my name is Magnar Nordahl. I'm an airline captain with a passion for aviation history. In this video, I have ranked the most dangerous military airplanes ever flown, not to their surroundings, but the pilots who flew them. I have excluded widowmakers like the Lockheed F104 Starfighter and the MiG-21. Both were demanding to operate, but most accidents happen because of inadequate training. Many air forces operated those airplanes with a good safety record. Some designs were indeed a handful for the pilots, like the McDonnell XF-85 Goblin, but they didn't kill the pilots. Therefore, they are not in my list. I have also excluded aircraft that proved to be inferior in combat, like the Douglas TBD and the Fairey Battle. They were good in 1937, but they didn't fare well at the outbreak of the World War II. And we have the Christmas Bullet, which by many is considered to be the worst aircraft ever made. Two were built, both crashed on the first flight, killing the pilots. But this was a private project, not military. Therefore, it is not on this list. That said, here is my top 10 military airplanes that succeeded in killing the pilots. Number 10. PSET 30 Sober. In the early 1930s, the Polish aircraft manufacturer PSET designed a small airliner for the Polish Airlines, LOT. However, the airline decided to buy the DC-2 instead, and it was decided to convert the PSET 30 to a bomber. The prototype made its first flight in March 1936. In November that year, it crashed after the wing skins, which were made of plywood, delaminated. At that time, the aircraft was already considered to be obsolete as a bomber, and it was used as a trainer instead. Only 20 aircraft were built, and with one crash, the fatality rate of the PSET 30 is 5%. Number 9. Walked F7U Cutlass. First flown in 1948, this jet fighter was ahead of its time. It had a futuristic look, and the design implemented many innovations. For example, the hydraulic system had a much higher pressure than previous aircraft, saving weight. But this caused many problems. And the landing gear caused trouble as well. And when the aircraft stalled in flight, it would tumble out of control. The aircraft was underpowered, and the takeoff and landing performance was very poor. It didn't help that the engines were prone to fire. Some aircraft were upgraded with the more powerful J35 engines, but they were known to flame out in rain. The Cutlass had the highest accident rate of all Navy fighters with swept wings. In all, 320 units were built, and a quarter of them crashed, killing 25 pilots. This gives a fatality rate of 8%. Number 8. Heinkel HD162 Spatz. This futuristic-looking jet fighter was developed in Germany towards the end of World War II in a desperate attempt to build a fighter that could shoot down the Allied bombers. The Spatz, or Salamander as it also was called, was mainly built of wood and other non-strategic materials. The aircraft was pleasant to fly, but there was a problem: the plywood. Plywood is produced by laminating thin sheets of wood with Tego film. However, the factory that produced the Tego film had been bombed. As a substitute, they used a glue that had not been properly tested. It soon proved that the glue after some time caused the plywood to disintegrate. This caused the first prototype to crash on its second flight, killing the pilot. Despite this deadly defect, the production continued, as there were no time to find a better solution. About 320 units were built, and most of them never saw operational service. Some machines were shut down, but most of the losses were caused by engine failures and in-flight breakups. The fatality rate, however, is not known to me. Maybe it was high enough to put the HG162 higher on the list. We might never know. Number 7. Messerschmitt Me163 Comet. This was the first operational rocket-powered interceptor. It had exceptional performance. It could climb to 12,000 meters in 3.5 minutes. And in 1944 it set an unofficial speed record of 1,130 kilometers per hour. 10 Comets were lost in combat. Many more were destroyed in accidents. The rocket fuel consisted of hydrazine hydrate methanol, called C-stuff, and hydrogen peroxide oxidizer, called T-stuff. The T-stuff instantly ignited anything organic, and it dissolved human flesh. It was also very corrosive, often resulting in leaks. If leaking T-stuff touched the C-stuff, the aircraft will disintegrate in a large explosion. And it didn't help that the rocket engine itself was not reliable. Many Comets exploded during takeoff and landing accidents. About 370 units were built. As with the Heinkel 162, the fatality rate is unknown, but I believe the Comet was worse than the Heinkel. Number 6. Tupolev Tu22. First flown in 1959, the Tu-22 was the first supersonic bomber to be produced in the Soviet Union. With a wing sweep of 55 degrees, the aircraft was indeed fast, but it needed a very long runway for both takeoff and landing. But the Tu-22 had many design flaws as well. At supersonic speed, aerodynamic heating distorted the flight control rods, making it harder to control the aircraft. And the design of the wing caused aileron reversal at high deflections, resulting in more or less loss of control. The aircraft also had a tendency to pitch up during landing. To make things worse, the crew members had seats that ejected downwards, making it impossible to survive an ejection below 350 meters. And most accidents happen at low altitudes. A total of 311 aircraft were built. By the end of 1975, at least 70 had been lost in accidents. That alone is 22.5%. And the aircraft continued to be in service for another 25 years. The total number of fatal accidents is not known to me, but because of the design of the ejection seats, it is plausible that most of the accidents were fatal. Number 5. Yonkers EF61. First flown in 1937, the Yonkers EF61 was a prototype high-altitude bomber. The front section was pressurized. 2 prototypes were built. The first had a large porthole in the nose where the pilot could see out. 6 months after the first flight, it developed flutter, broke apart and crashed. The second prototype had a raised metal cupola offset to the left, with small ports for the pilot to see out. This aircraft also crashed in December 1937. The first accident was most probably fatal. The circumstances around the second crash are not known to me. Therefore, I give it a 50% fatality rate. Number 4. The Havilland DH108. Designed in 1945, the DH108 was an experimental aircraft with a layout similar to the MA163. However, it was powered by a jet engine and had a landing gear. The engine and the main fuselage were from the DH100 Vampire fighter. The first prototype was designed to investigate low-speed handling. It first flew in 1946. Also first flown in 1946 was the second prototype that was designed to investigate high-speed handling. In September 1946, the aircraft suffered a catastrophic structural failure at high speed, killing Geoffrey de Havilland Jr., the son of the company's founder. The third prototype, with a more powerful engine and a streamlined nose, was first flown in 1947. On the 12th of April 1948, it set a new world record of 604.94 miles per hour, or 974.02 kilometers per hour, on a 100 kilometer circuit. 2 years later, the aircraft disintegrated at high speed, killing the pilot. The reason for both accidents was violent oscillations caused by shock waves when a certain Mach number was exceeded. This caused the pilots to hit the canopy with such a force that they broke their neck. 3 months later, the first prototype crashed during stall and spin testing, killing the pilot. This gives the DH108 a 100% fatality rate. Number 3. Kalinin K7. First flown in August 1933, the Kalinin K7 was a prototype heavy bomber and passenger transport. It was huge. The wingspan was 53 meters. As a bomber, it would have 8 20mm cannons and 8 machine guns, and a bomb load up to 16.6 tons. Maximum takeoff weight was 42.4 tons. The K7 was designed for 6 engines, but this was not enough, and the engine number 7 was added to the wing's trailing edge between the tail booms. In the beginning, the aircraft suffered from severe vibrations. The aircraft was strengthened and the tail section was redesigned. This appeared to have solved the problem. But in November, during a high-speed test at low level, heavy vibrations caused one of the tail booms to collapse. The aircraft crashed, killing most of the occupants. This gives a fatality rate of 100%. Number 2. Northrop XP79B. Nicknamed Flying Ram or Flying Chainsaw, the XP79 was designed to ram into enemy bombers by slicing off the wings and tails. To prevent damages, the wings of the XP79 were reinforced with magnesium armor. The design was unusual, as it was a flying wing where the pilot was lying on his belly. The intended power plant was a rocket engine, but it was not fully developed in time, and it was decided to use 2 jet engines instead. The XP79 had its first and only flight on the 12th of September 1945. After about 15 minutes of flight, the aircraft entered a spin, and the test pilot, Harry Crosby, was not able to recover. He bailed out, but was not able to open a parachute in time. Northrop's engineers determined that the control problem could be corrected, but the US Army Air Force decided to cancel the XP79 project. The war was over, and there was no longer a need for this kind of aircraft. The fatality rate was 100%. Number 1. Boeing BA 349 Nutter. Developed towards the end of World War II, the Nutter was a German point defense interceptor. The power plant was the same rocket engine as used in the M163. In addition, there were 4 booster rockets. The Nutter took off vertically and could reach 12,000 meters in about 1 minute. An autopilot would guide the Nutter to the proximity of the Allied bombers. Then the pilot will take control, aim, and fire a salvo of 19 55mm unguided rockets. Afterwards, the Nutter would be flown as a glider down to 3,000 meters. The fuselage will then be split in 2. The main fuselage and the engine will descend in a parachute, and the pilot will then leave the aircraft and land using his own parachute. 8 airframes were used as gliders, and 8 were used for unmanned vertical takeoff trials. After 1 successful unmanned launch, it was decided to make a manned flight. This happened on the 1st of March 1945. The test pilot, Lothar Sieber, became the first human to take off vertically using rocket power. But the flight proved to be very short. Just after launch, after reaching about 100 meters above the ground, the nutter pitched over on his back, and shortly after the canopy fell off. The nutter disappeared into low clouds, and half a minute later it crashed, killing Sieber. 8 more flights were carried out, but they were not manned. So the fatality rate for manned flight was 100%. And this concludes the top 10 list of the deadliest military airplanes. There might be other aircraft I am not aware of that deserve a place in the list. Please let me know in the comment section below. And that's all for this time. Please support my channel by sharing it with friends and all that. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day and happy landing!